Today we're talking not so much about a single exhibition with a single artist's work, but about an art prize, a national art prize, the Gallipoli Art Prize 2020. And we have three artists with us today. The winning artist, Alison Mackay, for her work Breathe. Hello, Alison.
Hello, Richard. Nice to be here.
We have Deirdre Bean, whose work was highly commended, and that's Major Smith's petrichor. Hello, Deirdre.
Hello, Richard. Thanks for having me.
And we also have the other artist whose work was highly commended, Lori Pensini, and her work is The Telegram. Hello, Lori.
Yes, hi, Richard. Nice to be here.
Well, look, welcome to all of you, and congratulations to all of you for your works in the Gallipoli Art Prize. And let's start with the winning work, as we should. The prize-winning work was entitled Breathe by Alison Mackay. And Alison, give us a sense of, as someone stands in front of this work, what are they going to see, and what would you like them to think about?
So the work is a 9-panel oil painting, and it features 9 different gas masks. Most of the gas masks are from around the time of World War I and World War II, which is around the time that the gas masks were originally patented. 1914 was that date. So I'd like people to think about breathing, that's the title of the painting, and protecting the breath, which is what gas masks were for. We breathe about 15,000 times a day, and we do it almost automatically, and without that, we die. So the gas masks are incredibly important.
So what was the trigger for the gas masks to become the subject of your Gallipoli Art Prize work?
Yes, look, in the current climate, when everybody is thinking about coronavirus, and obviously we're doing this remotely because of that, the painting actually wasn't about coronavirus at all. It was actually made at the end of January, beginning of February, which for people who don't know, that was a time when bushfires were ravaging Australia, and particularly the New South Wales South Coast, where I live and work. So actually the painting was much more about the bushfires than it was about coronavirus, and particularly about the RFS and the way they were epitomising the qualities of the Anzacs at the time in terms of courage and comradeship and love of country. So that was really the background to the painting.
Deirdre, with Alison just talking then about background to painting, there's so much that can be in a painting that may not be immediately obvious. Your highly commended work is called Major Smith's petrichor, and there's a lot of very subtle paintwork in the background of this image of a firearm, of a rifle. Give us a little bit of a sense of what you want people to see and what some of that background content is.
So the rifle I wanted to situate in a particular place in history, and that's the Battle of Long Tan. So reading about the history of the Battle of Long Tan, it happened, the battle started at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just before a massive big rainstorm. So imagine Major Smith, who was the major leading our soldiers in that battle. I imagine them sitting there waiting and happening, then the smell of this rain coming, and then of course it just was a complete deluge, and visibility was incredibly low, and they had a very hard time of it.
So the actual weapon that you chose to portray in this, you've got that sense of that personal memory of Major Smith, or that personal experience of Major Smith in the environment of a very tropical Vietnam. But the weapon itself is very precisely portrayed, as you do very beautifully. Tell us about your decision to create that weapon.
I had the opportunity to paint this weapon, draw it and paint it as I do, very slowly and meticulously, and I had a lot of time to think about the significance of that particular weapon. It was the standard issue personal weapon of the Australian soldiers at the battle in Vietnam, especially in that the Battle of Long Tan. And each day I went to work painting on that rifle, I imagined this weapon being almost the closest thing they had to their survival, and it had a very good reputation as being a very accurate weapon, and it was one of the keys to the success of Long Tan.
That very precise rendition, which is part of your practice, takes us into the world that you describe in a very material way. But coming back to you, Alison, I know you've been a finalist in the Gallipoli Art Prize for 7 years now, exploring a range of different themes. What draws you to the prize and the themes or the obligations, inspirations of the prize itself?
Yes, look, it's a very interesting prize, Richard. As you said at the beginning, it is called the Gallipoli Art Prize. But in fact, works don't need to be about Gallipoli. They don't even need to be about war. They're actually officially responding to the Gallipoli Creed, which involves the qualities of loyalty, of respect, of courage, comradeship, and love of country. So it's a very broad brief, and everybody interprets it very, very differently, which makes for a very diverse and interesting exhibition. And I've always found that I can interpret it in a very personal manner, which makes the paintings that I make each year really interesting and fun for me, and hopefully entertaining for other people to look at as well. Gas masks are actually, for me, a still life painting. They are an object in a space, and essentially that's pretty much what still life painting is. And that's the large focus of my practice is still life painting. And I suppose I've always seen that as a particularly interesting area of painting, because it seems to me to be incredibly contemporary, because essentially you're painting things that surround you every day. You're getting involved in the materiality of what it is your everyday life. So for me, still life has always been a really contemporary practice, and that's where I've really loved to focus.
Do you enjoy that process through the Gallipoli Art Prize of exploring something that you certainly wouldn't have around you every day?
Yes, look, it does allow me to expand my practice a little bit. Although when you look at the gas masks, you can see that they're made out of things like leather and rubber and glass and steel. And these are all actual materials that I often paint. I particularly love painting reflective objects and also clear glass objects. So in a way, the still life, the gas masks were just a perfect variation on what it is I already love to try and describe using oil paint.
Lori Pensini, I should mention, by the way, that you're in West Australia at the moment, and thank you for joining us from the West. Your image is the telegram, your painting is the telegram. Give us a sense of why you decided to make that a part of this year's Gallipoli Art Prize.
It's sort of something from my childhood. My grandma was we were farmers. We still are. And it tells stories of the loneliness of being in the bush, but also more so around the loneliness of war and being a rural woman. There, the uncertainty of having men, loved ones, brothers and husbands not returning from war, and given the communication of the community, there was the only communication was through this telegram that would arrive in the post, if at all, and it took her 2 days to get to the post office by horse and cart, to then, and all that time, and she had children on board, and she was sitting there wondering whether, what the telegram was going to say, if there was going to be one, and if there was one, what it would say. So there was trepidation around her future for her family as well. I wanted, being a rural woman myself, and I know that a lot of these rural women live in isolation now. I wanted to highlight that it's still a part of our life, and even in the isolation, my grandfather, also with the war with my grandfather, there's still there's still that character still comes through. He, you know, he came back and he never really recovered, and so she had to take up. She had to hold fast her family and the landscape as well. So there was a lot of responsibility for the women. So I just sort of wanted a bit more of a plight of the women's role in war, even though it wasn't on the front line. It was back home, quietly, but it still had a major effect on families and even the families now.
So a very intimate, a very emotional painting, as we see the young woman who could well be your grandmother lying on the pillow looking at that telegram, and we don't quite know as the viewer of the painting what the news in that telegram is, although we assume it's not good.
Yeah,
did you want
absolutely.
to try to get that emotional response from the viewer?
Absolutely, Richard. And for me, I grew up with the tales of how the war and understanding that my grandfather never came back the man he left. And I didn't really understand it, but as a woman now, I understand the importance of connection and loss. So I think it's more prevalent now, and especially given these times too, how we can reflect on the people in our life and how important it is, that family unit, no matter where you live. So yeah, it is my work based around personal reflection of what I've gone through, my forebears have gone through. And I think it's really important as an artist to be emotionally connected or invested in your work. And I think that comes through with the sense of how that work comes.
As you respond to those themes of the Gallipoli Creed, how varied do the works that you produce in response to that tend to be?
Yeah, I'm a storyteller, and I'm reflecting on the stories that I grew up with generally, because like I mentioned before, the war still has effect in society today, and like Alison said, with the camaraderie and strength of character, and I really respect that. You know, it's a great platform, this visual idea of stimulating people through images to reconnect to their past and also what they have now. I think it's important.
And Deirdre, again, I hope perhaps we may be able to reconnect with you. Your sense of connection with the Gallipoli Art Prize and works which you've had involved with the prize previously, how would you describe that?
I actually been to Gallipoli twice, and I've also been to the Western Front with artists, and each time I can't help getting completely emotionally overwhelmed by these places. And when in my response to being in those places is to create something that's, I would think, aesthetically beautiful, something that's takes me a long time to do, but sort of asking the viewer maybe to consider what not even the subject matter, what the rifle might have been used for, but also seeing it as a representation of something quite beautiful in the face of something quite horrific, such as the war. I
would like to thank each of you for being involved with this, and congratulate each of you for your awards in the Gallipoli Art Prize 2020. And a reminder to viewers, of course, to go to the Gallipoli Art Prize website, have a look at the exhibition, have a look not only at the winning work and the highly commended works, but a whole range of other very interesting and beautifully executed works that are part of the exhibition, and have a look at the virtual tour that can be undertaken. Terrific technology there. But my thanks to all of you. So thank you, Alison Mackay.
Thank you, Richard. Great to be here.
Thank you, Lori Pensini.
Yes, thank you, Richard.
And thank you, Deirdre Bean.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for being a part of the discussion, and thank you all for sharing your exhibition, the Gallipoli Art Prize 2020, with us today.